I want to thank all of you for being here today. I think 2011 is a fascinating year. I think it's the most interesting year in the history of MicroStrategy. It may very well be the most interesting year in the history of technology. There are an extraordinary set of forces that are rippling through the economy right now. It's causing an extraordinary amount of enthusiasm, but an incredible amount of anxiety as well. What we're seeing is a set of technology forces that are impacting not just the software industry or the computer industry, but governments, economies, entire industries. And it's possible for these forces to topple a government. It's possible for them to topple a brand. We also see brands being created. Phenomena like Justin Bieber didn't exist without networks like YouTube. We saw all the turmoil that's taken place throughout the Middle East. We've seen for the first time countries pull the plug on the internet in order to slow down some of these forces. We're seeing more and more in the media interesting stories on the political struggles between governments and networks and technology companies. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you wouldn't have ever expected that an entire government would be threatened by a Silicon Valley startup, but now we actually see these sort of things. So it's a fascinating time to be in the industry. What I wanted to do today was to share with you our perspective on all the forces that are shaping the economy, and also to share with you some of the investments that we're making at MicroStrategy in order to make our customers successful and allow all of our customers and our partners to benefit from all of these changes in the economy right now and to get ahead of them instead of chasing them. I think we choose to view the world by focusing on four major forces. There are the impacts of the mobile networks and the rise of mobile computing, the impact of social computing, the impact of cloud computing, and then the impact of the big data that's been created by all of these forces. It's each of them in turn, cloud, mobile, social, is driving information at a more rapid rate and at greater volumes and with greater volatility and velocity than we've seen before in our lifetimes. If we consider the last 12 months in the mobile environment, it was about 12 months ago that I was here in the south of France, and we announced our first MicroStrategy mobile offering. From the year 2001 to 2009, there really wasn't much change in the intelligence industry. The status quo was we were all shipping web intelligence, and most of the intelligence we were providing for our customers was either Windows or web delivered and printed on paper. And so the industry was fairly stable. With the advent of the iPhone and then the iPhone 2 and eventually the iPhone 3, we started seeing the dawn of a new realization that mobile computing was going to eventually overwhelm desktop computing. And today we see that accelerating. The desktop internet age is, for all practical purposes, over. All of the innovation is shifting out of the desktop and out of the internet browsers that run on the desktop, and it's moving fairly rapidly into the mobile devices. I think Apple shipped something on the order of almost 20 million iPhones in the past quarter. There are now analysts that are predicting that Apple may ship as many as 15 million iPads in the third quarter. We're in the third quarter, which would mean they would be clocking it faster than 1 million a week. If anything close to that comes to fruition, then they'll probably ship about 40 million iOS devices in the quarter. And of course, just multiplying by 4 gets us to about 150 million units a year. In 36 months, Apple would have 500 million plus units installed. That unit volume is comparable to what's going on with the Android environment right now. So it's pretty clear that in the next 36 months, We're going to have something on the order of 1 billion devices in people's pockets that are as powerful as an iPhone 4 or more powerful. I would guess twice as powerful as an iPhone 4. Those 1 billion people will control substantially all the money and power on the face of the earth. And they'll all expect to be able to take transactional decisions, to obtain information, to communicate, and to project their influence and power and obtain whatever they want, all from the palm of their hand. This, I think, represents an inflection point. In the third quarter of 2011, we happen to be in the third quarter of 2011, the global shipment of smartphones and tablets is expected to exceed the shipments of PCs and laptops. So it's an inflection point in that regard, and that won't reverse itself. At this point, it's only going to accelerate. I think we're going to see not just 1 billion tablet computers shipped. We're going to see a world where there are 2 billion and perhaps 3 billion tablet computers shipped. Tablets appeal to people that never actually had interest in a desktop computer or a laptop computer. The economist on a tablet computer reads itself. If you have a 6-year-old, there's no better way to send them to school than with a tablet computer that knows how to read and will teach them how to read. And on the other hand, a newspaper in the hands of an 85-year-old person will change its font size. And so what we've got is an inversion, not just in hardware. These mobile devices, they're cheaper, they're better, and they appeal to age groups from age 3 to age 90. And for the first time in human history, it's actually cheaper to learn to read with a computer than it is to learn to read with paper. That's a fascinating observation, but a more fascinating observation is given the fact that everybody with any money or power on this earth is going to have something like this in their hand, it means that mobile software is about to replace everything that people write, carry, or touch. So software is moving from a solid state to a vapor state. I want you to imagine like a block of ice, and it's sitting on a table. You go to the table to find it. We've heated it up so much that it's actually melting the water, and it's vaporizing to steam, and it's floating away. And that's probably the most how would I say it, polite way to put it. If it's not a vapor state, it's almost a viral state. It's an airborne virus, because now the software is it's in your clothing, it's in your pockets, it's floating into your bedrooms, into your cars, into the bathrooms, into the restaurant. You can't really get away from the software. So we'll almost look at this era as up until 2010, people went to their computers to run software. And after 2010, the software came to them and enveloped them, and you couldn't get away from it. And that's having profound effects. What I think is pretty clear right now is that if you hold something, if it's in your pocket, if it's cash or credit cards or a car key or a credential, it's going to become software. We're gonna use these to start our cars, to open our doors. We're going to use it to get into a nightclub or get through an airport or get onto an airplane. And we're not just going to use it because it's more convenient, but it's definitely more convenient. Once you've got your keys and your cash loaded onto your smartphone, you can't lose it. In fact, the greatest risk I have once I've got the software on the phone is I lose the phone, I replace the phone, and an hour later I've got everything in my life back again. And that concept of things we carry and touch and write becoming software is a profound concept, because as soon as things become software, they're no longer subject to laws of physics, they're no longer subject to laws of friction, they're no longer conservative, they're no longer limited in time and space and context. The difference between a software company and a hardware company, or the difference between someone that's a software theorist and someone that's a physicist is the genius physicist says, I can throw a baseball from a pitcher's mound 90 feet through the air. And I'm very smart, so I know that if I'm in the water, I can throw that baseball perhaps only 10 or 20 feet because of the viscosity of the water and the friction. And I'm very, very smart, so I know that if I was in outer space, I could throw the baseball 30 million miles. And so the conventional Newtonian physicists, they understand that throwing a baseball is different if it's in space versus in water versus in air. And that's the way hardware companies think, and that's the way traditional industries think. Now, if I throw a baseball through cyberspace, and I'm a software company, what I think is, I threw the baseball, it split into 100 beach balls. The beach balls converted themselves into gold. They started spinning. A flock of ducks flew out, landed on my yard, and converted themselves into a Ferrari. And a beautiful blonde walked up and got in, and I got on the other side, and we drove off. And that's how a software person thinks. There are no constraints, right? Not in time and space. You're not limited. Nothing is the same way as it used to be. You're only limited by your imagination in software. You can think anything you want to think. As soon as a key becomes a piece of software, it's not just that I get rid of the key. Once it's software, I can zap it to my friend in 1 second. In fact, once it's software, I can program it to go to all my family in 1 second. Once the key becomes software, I can decide that I'm going to create a set of friends that can get into my apartment in 1 second, and I can make that key only work between 9 and 5 on Monday through Friday, and I can issue a special purpose key that gets a workman into my apartment, but only if I authorize the workman to get into my apartment 5 minutes before he knocks on the door. A software key becomes non-conservative. It takes on 1,000 facets. As soon as cash becomes software, I can do more than just give it to you. I can give you cash that you can only spend on coffee at Starbucks between 9 and 10 in the morning in Seattle. As soon as a credit card becomes software, I don't have to worry about losing my credit card, but as soon as it's software, I can issue a credit card to my 3 children and give them credit lines of up to $1,000 a month, and I can decide where they can spend that money. I can cap them out at $100 a charge, and I can put myself on the critical path to clearing the charge. I can even let them pre-authorize the charge. I can create a software credit card that a CFO issues to 3,000 people. I can integrate it with the reporting. I can constrain how it gets spent. I can even determine what airlines you get to fly on with that credit card. I can revoke your credit card in a second. I can automatically revoke your credit card in a second. I can put 4 other people on the critical path. I can create a credit card that you can't use unless your wife approves of. Yeah, I know you guys like that. So software credit cards are limited only by your imagination. Electromechanical credit cards and plastic credit cards don't do any of these things. And so what you've got is an interesting situation. You've got a set of hardware companies that are thinking they'll linearly move into the software industry. And then you've got companies that really think like software companies. And they're not limited by a conventional linear thinking. They're actually just thinking out of the box. And the result is entire industries are being reshaped by software and will be reshaped by software. Take the entire phenomenon of hijacked retail. Same-store sales in many of the traditional big box retailers are down 2 to 4% year over year. Sales at Amazon are up 38% year over year. We know that the overall demand is not up 38% year over year. In fact, demand's fairly flat. So what's going on? In this particular case, traditional retail is I collect a bunch of stores and a bunch of inventory and a bunch of people, which I train, and I provide them with a bunch of legacy point-of-sale systems or traditional inventory systems, merchandising systems, and marketing systems. New generation retail, the software retail became online, and Amazon was the first company to really pioneer that at scale. and they started selling via the web. But Amazon became a very potent force at the point that their software burned off of solid state and became vapor state. Amazon software running on a smartphone is a dangerous and deadly force, much more viral, much more deadly than Amazon software running on a laptop computer. If I walk into a Best Buy and I see a television on the wall, and I decide I want it, or perhaps I want information on it, if I look over and the salesperson is busy helping another customer, I'm not a captive anymore. I'm not subject to a monopolistic practice. I can actually get my merchandising help or my sales help from this. I can scan the television. I can get an interactive video that tells me why I ought to buy this television from Amazon. In fact, Amazon's sitting in Seattle, so Amazon can re-merchandise the television. It can tell me that a better television just came off the freighter from Japan yesterday. Their supply chain is 60 days shorter than the supply chain of a traditional retailer. So they might very well tell me that that's a good television, but there's a better one with 5 new features that's actually cheaper that they can ship to me right now. If I look over at the checkout line and it's too long, if it's 10 minutes long, I can actually go ahead and punch a button and I can check out right here on this phone. The traditional IT department created a legacy point-of-sale checkout system. They had a monopoly on the process of checkout in the store. And in fact, it used to be most retailers had a monopoly on their own business process within their own real estate. In the last year, that's changed. If software is vapor, if software is viral, then your competitor can place the point of sale into the pocket of your customer in your store. And so you've gone to all the trouble to rent the space, hire the tens of thousands of people, train them, put all those tens of thousands of point of sale terminals in, wire all the networks, and then after you've done all that, your competitor ships software in the pocket of your customer that actually hijacks the sale. If my wait is too long, my competitor can shrink it. If I'm offering delivery terms in the next 7 to 10 days, the competitor can offer them faster. If I'm offering you a 4-hour window during which time you'll get the television delivered, my competitor can offer me a 15-minute window and promise to actually text me on the phone 10 minutes before the truck rolls up to my front door. If I can't meet those terms, then the sale is going to get hijacked. You can't hijack a sale with a laptop computer in the palm of your hand with a scanner in this hand. It's just too hard for the consumer. But you can hijack the sale with a smartphone device, and we're seeing it happen everywhere. The result is manifesting itself in a number of phenomena. One is the same-store sales being down year over year in the traditional retailers. The second is a movement in the stock prices of many of these companies. If you notice, Amazon stock is up. Traditional retailer stocks are not up. Apple stock is up. Enthusiasm for networks and telecommunications companies is up and will continue to be a driver on Wall Street. Another manifestation of this is the angst with which retailers and other large companies are reorganizing their IT departments. There's extraordinary stress that's being placed on CIOs everywhere, and there's a newfound enthusiasm for cloud computing and social networking, and these things are being driven in part by the strategic forces that are tearing at all of these traditional industries. People are looking at what's happened in the book industry and the traditional media industry, and they're realizing they need to change, and they need to find some way to change faster because they're not going to get 24 months in order to make these changes. In addition to the extraordinary angst that's rippling through the industry because of these software processes that are attacking legacy IT departments, the other thing that's going on is I think a rippling awareness that just about every major transactional process is going to have to be remediated. We're going to have to rebuild all the applications that work on Windows machines and on the web, and we're going to rebuild them on mobile interfaces. And it looks like increasingly it'll be the iOS and Android. If you think about everything you do in your organization that requires a piece of paper or requires an instruction, they're all done better on a smart device or an iPad device or something similar to that. We see millions and millions and millions of these business processes being rebuilt. And it's not just that the business processes are going to be reconstructed in a mobile environment. The other fascinating phenomena is that a whole range of processes that were never automated are now going to be automated, like homeroom attendance for your 8th grader. Used to be we checked this off on a pad of paper, but it's not going to happen that way anymore. People are going to check into homeroom using a smartphone. Prescriptions from your doctor or timesheets that you might punch. As you look at all these things, they start to look kind of silly. Why would you take a timesheet and punch it or fill out a paper form or a traffic ticket? All these things start to look fairly legacy. And I think we're going to see millions and millions and millions of these things all being rebuilt as fast as people can rebuild them. At MicroStrategy, it's caused us to come to a set of conclusions. One conclusion is that you really can't remain viable in the intelligence industry unless you have an extraordinarily compelling mobile interface. It has to be native, it has to be multi-touch, it has to be sensor aware and telemetry aware. It needs to be extremely easy to use. The second thing we've concluded is that our customers are going to evolve, and we're going to go from having a few million analyst customers or people that are paid to look for insights and sift through data. And we're going to enhance our user base and need to enhance it by tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people out to the customers and out to the executives and out to the operational professionals who wouldn't normally be characterized as business intelligence users. If you consider the paradigm, traditionally, an analyst would sit at a desk, perform an assessment, print a piece of paper, and hand it to an executive. The executive looks at it, circles something, hands it to a clerk, makes some decisions. The clerk goes off and types the decisions back into a computer. So you've got this analyst, executive, clerk, triumvirate of sorts, maybe the holy trinity of business intelligence. Well, now, of course, executives are realizing they can get their hands on 500,000 pages of information in 5 seconds. So we're seeing the traditional business intelligence process hijacked. I have yet to be in the office of a CEO in the last year where that person did not have an iPad. In fact, I'm hard-pressed to think of any rich, powerful, influential person that doesn't either have one or doesn't want one. I would say that it's highly unlikely that anybody in the next 24 to 36 months won't have one if they have any measure of power on this planet. The first 300 million people control substantially all the wealth on the planet, and they're becoming very impatient because now they realize they can bypass the analyst and the clerks, and they can get the information immediately, and they can take the decision immediately. So the insight there is that your customer is not the same anymore. In fact, it's not just the executive that bypasses the analyst. It turns out the executive is standing in front of a customer, and the customer is bypassing the executive. So a lot of these business processes that might have been performed by a clerk at the direction of an executive who is responding to a request from a customer, now those processes are floating out of the hands of the clerk, past the executive, into the customer, and I don't think it's going to reverse. I think we're going to see continually this information float from the people that sit at cubicles and wait for answers into the hands of the people walking around the floor, walking around the bank branch, or traveling around the customer base with an iPad in their hand, and then will float out into the customer base. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful person in, say, the finance industry is the customer that has the $100 million in assets and wants to decide how to dispose of them. It's certainly not the salesperson or the branch manager or anybody in between. And they're realizing very rapidly they can get it at all. And so that conclusion has caused us to decide that we not only need to provide the world's most powerful intelligence interface on a mobile device, we also need to make sure that that mobile device performs transactions. There's no reason I would ever ask for intelligence without wanting to take a decision or take a transaction. And it's becoming less and less likely that anybody's going to want to take a decision or make a transaction without intelligence to back it up. That led us to enter the market for transactions, and the latest release of MicroStrategy Mobile supports transaction services as well as intelligence. Now, it also turns out that all these mobile devices are becoming incredibly powerful multimedia tools. In fact, anybody with their own iPad knows that it works as pretty good television. And so if you actually have a network of 100,000 customers that are interested in what you have to sell, you also have an interactive 100,000 person television network. Eminem has 42 million fans on Facebook, which means to the extent he's got attention, he's got a 42 million person television network. And when you combine your ability to gather fans, say on Facebook, with your ability to broadcast high-def video at scale from YouTube or from Facebook, then you start to realize that there's a coming age of hundreds of thousands of interactive television networks and interactive multimedia networks, and those can't be discounted because that multimedia is what you would use to market or persuade or to train or to provide services to, or in fact be the essential product of any given brand. So with that in mind, we've expanded MicroStrategy Mobile so that it's an intelligence, a transaction, and it's a multimedia development platform. And we realize now we're not really just in the business intelligence platform business. We're not providing a platform for business intelligence anymore. We're actually providing a mobile application development platform, and we need to act accordingly. And I'm pretty excited to show that to you. You'll see some examples later today and throughout the conference. But it represents an expansion for us in our thinking as a business. And I think it represents an expansion and new opportunity for all of our customers and all of our partners. Because simply put, software delivered via mobile device is 10 times more valuable than software delivered over the web. And business intelligence, combined with transactional and multimedia capabilities, is 10 times more valuable. It's going to reach 10 times more people, perhaps 100 times more people. And that is an interesting opportunity for all of us.